This is the Dreadful Podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're halfway through. We're talking about Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, Episode 5, Children of the Royal Sun.
I told your mother you were a good cop. Should I go back and revise my opinion?
Just say it.
1, I don't know who you are today. 2, I know you're hiding something about last night. 3, you've been up and down like a yo-yo, and that makes me nervous. Because 4, I don't feel like stepping into a dangerous situation with an unstable armed yo-yo at my side.
I'm fine.
What happened with your brother?
He told me some things.
What things,
It's
Chief?
private, Louis. It's family.
Okay. But we do this, we go in there, we risk our necks, fine, but we are focused. We are by the book. Or we call for backup and hand this over to a better team.
You know there's no better team, Louis.
Welcome back, fellow Penny Faithful. This is TV Podcast Industries. We are talking about the 5th episode of Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, Children of the Royal Sun. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Dreadfuls. I am one of your other hosts, John.
And I am the other unstable yo-yo in this group. I am Chris.
You know, it took me a while to choose what the quote for this week would be. And one of the things I absolutely hate doing, because I feel bad doing it, is editing out curse words from dialogue from TV shows, purely because I think it's really bad of me to edit out their dialogue. I didn't write it. Why do I get the right to edit it? But I just can't use curse words on the podcast, unfortunately. As some of our long-term listeners know, we have a rating for a podcast, which means we can't use curse words on it. And I can't change it because with 500 episodes of the show, I'd have to go back and change it for every single old podcast. So,
for fuck's sake.
Thanks, John. That'll give me a little extra edit on the road tomorrow. To release tomorrow. Sorry, of course. I'm not going to be on the road editing a podcast tomorrow.
No, don't do that.
That could be really interesting. It's kind of like the roving producer editing.
Now, admittedly, over the years, you know, the 5-6 years we've been podcasting, I did edit on a plane to Thailand. I've edited beside a pool in France. I've edited the podcast. So I have edited in some weird places over the years.
Yes, you have.
Definitely a hotel room in London. Did that.
Yeah, and
twice.
in New York.
And in New York for New York Comic Con.
We've recorded in New York as well.
Yeah.
I've recorded in New York.
That's true, yeah. He was in an apartment in New York when a fire alarm was going off, yeah.
That was great fun.
Lots of weird stuff over the last 6 years.
I didn't burn down. I am not. Santa Muerte did not raise me like Raul.
Yes, it was just an evacuation that was going on, wasn't it? You weren't actually on fire, which is pretty good.
No, I am hot, but that's besides the point.
Very true, Chris. Very true.
Thank you. But we're back for Children of the Royal Sun.
Yes, we are, yeah. And as we're halfway through the season, we'll give a big shout out to our wonderful Patreons who've been supporting us throughout the year this year since we started our Patreon. I got 2 brand new Patreons in the last week. Guys, we got Cassandra McIntosh and Jenny V, who supported us over on Patreon. We did mention last week that we'll be recording an exclusive Patreon movie chat about Captain America, the Winter Soldier in the next week or so. And that'll be available exclusively over on Patreon. So, Cassandra and Jenny, thanks so much for joining us. You'll be able to get access to that podcast. Well, once we've recorded and put it out for you, you'll get access to it, but you'll be able to get access to that in the next couple of weeks. So thanks so much for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Cassandra and Jenny, for the support. Really, really appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you, Viva Vendetta, and my favorite 1990s personal computer.
Macintosh.
About time, yeah. Macintosh, 1990s, early 1990s. Yeah.
See, I thought you would have gone for Cassie, as in Ant-Man's daughter.
Oh, I could go Cassandra Cain if that's better.
Oh, maybe that's pretty good.
There you go. See, that's slightly more on brand with the comics.
Absolutely. And thank you again to all of the rest of our patrons. You can support us over there on patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries. But if you don't want to support us on Patreon or can't support us at the moment, we know times are tough. You can support us by giving us a review over on iTunes or by sharing the podcast as usual. Share it with everybody else that you know that's watching Penny Dreadful, City of Angels.
Yes, because sharing the podcast is sharing the love. We actually did get a couple of brand new reviews specifically for the Dreadful podcast because it is dreadful by name, but not in nature. First up, we had a 5-star review. Thank you so much for Saddle Sore 98 because that's just an amazing name.
That is very
People
cool.
cream on it.
Yeah.
They said, best podcast this season of Penny Dreadful. As I said, 5 stars, and they said the beautiful words, very insightful recap of the show. I always look forward to their thoughts. Thank you so much, Saddlesore98.
Thanks so much.
Hope you get them looked at.
Yeah, thank you, Saddlesore.
We also had US WhoCast. Who? Yes, US WhoCast. They said thoroughly entertaining 5 stars. And the description was very detailed and a considered podcast covering a great show. Yes, the WhoCast in the US know us, and I would say who, but that's still good. 5 stars, I'm so happy, thank you.
I was presuming that's a Doctor Who cast, Chris. Doctor
that
Who
makes more
podcast.
sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know the way
okay.
some people shorten it down to cast when they talk about podcasts because they're cooler than us. We go for TV podcast industries to make it almost impossible to find us. So thanks so much to everyone that's found us on iTunes and given us some reviews as well. We also got a review from Lizno, who gave us another 5 stars and said, truly enjoyable. I love the banter among the hosts.
We don't have banter.
No, we don't.
We have crack. We have not conniptions, because that's a bad one. What do we have? We have crack. We definitely have.
We have banter as well.
We have banter. Well, no, I don't want banter. It's more gibberish.
And gibberish, yeah. We have
Yeah.
gibberish, banter, and crack, indeed. Yeah. Thanks,
And that
Lizno.
just sounds like a good night.
And thanks, US WhoCast. It does sound like a good night. Yes, definitely.
Just again, in case you don't know that in Ireland, crack is just a bit of fun, right? So this show is only showing in America and in Canada and in Australia. So they may not be aware
That's
that crack
true. Crack
is
being
fun.
spelt CRAIC.
Don't want Tiago knocking down our door to arrest us for having crack in our podcast room.
Exactly. We also got an iTunes review for TV podcast industries as well. Great podcast, 5-star review. Love all these shows these guys cover. The pub quizzes are great fun too. And that was from the Steve38. Thank you so much, Steve, for that review. Really,
We know who that is.
We do, Steve Brown.
Steve Brown.
Yeah, really good.
Wonderful contributor to our feedback.
Yeah.
Yes, he is such a wonderful contributor. Shame he's lying about the pub quizzes, though. That's just like blatant misrepresentation. I'm just.
It's just because you don't participate in them.
Exactly.
It's true. It's
Exactly.
true.
Yeah. They are great fun. They're so much fun that John's actually still trying to put together his pub quiz for our 500th podcast, which will be coming up at the end of this season of Penny Dreadful City of Angels. So only got 5 more weeks to go, John.
I know.
Lots of prep required.
I
Loads
feel
of prep.
old.
Yes. Loads of
Podcast
crap.
old, not really old.
Another thing, Chris, is because you don't drink when you do it. That's the problem. That's why I always say, grab yourself a drink.
That's true. That is very
To
true.
soften the blow of these mind-bending, really difficult questions that I'm throwing at everyone.
Well, once again, thank you to everybody that's set us up. Thanks, shared the podcast, and joined our Patreon as well, and given us some reviews on iTunes. It's been really good of you. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Thanks everyone for all the support. Really good going for sure. Right, yeah, on to Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, episode 5, Children of the Royal Sun. Derek, who directed this episode.
The episode was directed by Roxann Dawson. It's directed some of the biggest TV shows out there at the moment, and did House of Cards, This Is Us, The Americans. Also directed an episode of Marvel's Runaways, 3 episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., probably well known to a lot of us that grew up in the 80s and 90s as B'Elanna Torres on Star Trek Voyager, the half Klingon, half human crew member on that show as well. So started out in acting, directed 2 episodes of Voyager, and then continued on working within Star Trek and now within loads of other shows. So great to have her on board for Penny Dreadful City of Angels.
Yes, Lieutenant B'Elanna Torres, indeed.
I still remember so fondly Voyager, but at the same time, I can't remember a standout episode of B'Elanna Torres just because they all blur into one memorable character. if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. She was pretty central to the show. She was there from right at the start, and then as part of the Maquis, and then continued throughout the show. Sorry, fellow Penny Faithful, we did cover Star Trek Picard quite recently, so I've been watching a lot of Star Trek, so that's why all this stuff is stuck in my head. The episode was written by Jose Rivera. Did you get that, guys? I didn't say John Logan. This episode was not written
I know.
by...
I'm clutching my pearls.
I know.
Don't do that.
Not on a podcast.
Yeah, otherwise you'll be speaking soprano.
This is the only episode that is written by Jose Rivera for Penny Dreadful, and the first one, as I mentioned before, not written by John Logan for this series. He had a couple of episodes in season 3 of the original Penny Dreadful, also not written by him, but I guess the extension of the show to 10 episodes means a couple of other writers can come in and get a main credit for the episodes. Jose Rivera is probably best known for writing The Motorcycle Diaries, the movie about the early years of Che Guevara, and the movie adaptation of Jack Kerouac's On the Road as well.
Excellent stuff.
2 really good movies there.
Yeah.
I have seen neither.
Really?
But by writing alone on this episode, I may actually clutch my pearls and sit down and watch them. I really don't think I know how to use that term properly.
I don't think you do.
Stop clutching your pearls, Chris.
That's not how you use that. That's definitely not how you use that phrase.
So I know it's a terrible, terrible thing, and it's probably a shame on my cinematography kind of
all your
houses,
days. Chris.
Yeah.
But you could hold it against me. But I've seen some things that most people probably have never seen. Multiple times I've watched Encino Man / California Man, In the Army Now, Jury Duty, and most importantly, the seminal work, Biodome.
If this was Game of Thrones, it would be curses on all your houses, Chris. There would be red, blue, green, and yellow weddings all over the show.
Or just people like stripping me naked, walking down the street going, shame, shame,
Yeah.
shame.
Something like that.
Especially after those 5 movies that you mentioned. I'd highly recommend Motorcycle Diaries. Thought that was a really good film. Yeah, definitely check that out if you do get the chance. But John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for the episode?
Sure. Mateo Vega grapples with the aftermath of the murder of Officer Riley, but Rio puts him at ease. Josephina Vega confides in Sister Molly, who's shocked to discover Josephina is Tiago's sister. Meanwhile, Tiago and Lewis's investigation takes them from the Sonora Town slums to the Vega house, while Dr. Peter Kraft receives an alarming phone call from Elsa, asking for help to bury her murdered husband, Mr. Branson. Dottie Minter warns rocket scientist Brian Koenig to keep clear of the Nazis, as Kurt watches on. Alex lectures Councilman Townsend about his own connection to Kurt. As Tiago discovers and confronts his brother for the murder of Officer Riley, Mateo is unrepentant, but Tiago sets him free as Lewis captures another member of the Pacheco gang, Diego.
A big episode this week. I'll call this out quickly, and I was going to keep this for notes, but if you did follow our Dreadful podcast as we went back through the first 3 seasons of Penny Dreadful, this is very similar in tone to season 2, episode 5 of the original Penny Dreadful, where basically it's sexy time
Sexy Penny Dreadful.
on Penny Dreadful, where every character has sex and there's something behind every manipulation or every type of relationship that's going on in the show, and it all culminates or comes to a head, as we said at the time, in this episode.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I tell you what, from this episode, I would certainly like to be a tailor. I would certainly measure that in a leg, for sure.
I feel really bad for the actor on this part, because I was just like, you have a whole crew with you. Mm-hmm. You have a fantastic actress who is not half bad on the eye. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to, it's probably a cold set and you're butt naked. And then you got a guy who's not half bad either to the eye. And at the whole time, you have to kind of just stay in character, like wear your, what do they call them? Merkins? No, it is a merkin. Yeah. So my God, this is probably one of the hardest scenes, and I'm using that term specifically for a young actor.
I don't know. I think you can play it off that he's in character the whole time. If anything does pop up during the scene,
Well, absolutely. He could be called the Tailor of Panama, just to keep with the Latin American theme.
Hey, look at you! Well done.
I mean, I was just thinking, well, the next time I go to get a suit fitted or something like that, say, for example, a wedding suit, and, you know, would the tailor expect me to sort of
Lay down with him and his...
Well, not necessarily lay down. I was just thinking more that he would take my measurements whilst I was unclothed.
It's a very different tailor, Chris.
Hopefully, Chris, he wouldn't do that. I think that would be maybe slightly unprofessional.
Especially if you're going for your wedding suit as well.
But if that was the way that you... If that was the way you had to get measured up for your new suit... and the weird thing is because they're so baggy, it's almost like they're not really measured up properly anyway. So,
well, that was the part I was kind of like, when you're doing a zoot suit, do you not just go super big on everything? It basically looked like you stole Shaquille O'Neal or Michael Jordan's suit and put it on a 10-year-old.
It's apparently part of the original origin of the zoot suits was that they were suits bought cheaply because they were oversized. So they were ill-fitting suits was how they started in around 32, 33. But by the time it had come up to this stage, the bigger members of the community, the most important members of the community would want to make sure they have a proper tailored zoot suit that's made to fit perfectly. Even though that's baggy, doesn't mean it can't be fit perfectly.
That is
to be
true.
the perfect bagginess, let's say. And I suppose Rhea does point out that the reason why he's stripped naked is actually because he's covered in the blood of the person he just murdered the day before. So unless you go for your wedding suit fitting after murdering someone, John, I doubt someone will ask you to take off the
it's interesting you should say that because I did think that we should save this for the podcast. Probably. But I do think, well, this is the podcast, but I do think, sorry, it's getting very metaphysical now, but like, I do think that, you know, it was like she was taking it off, the clothes so that she could, you know, he could go for a shower or bathe him down and all that, and then kind of went, I can kill two birds with one stone here and measure him up for the suit whilst I'm doing it. And then all that was bypassed as they basically went into a hot, steamy threesome, which I'm surprised still happened, as you mentioned, Derek, when a flick knife is thrown at the wall. I think any kind of passion I would have at that stage would soon deflate.
Yeah. Quite
with a knife sticking into the wood, so to speak.
So speaking of deflating and other really bad segues, let's talk about some big moments from this episode. That was a terrible segue. I'm gonna own it.
It is a great segue, Chris.
I tried.
You know, Chris, you know, it being our big moments for the episode really just could have been your segue if you hadn't tried too hard.
But I like the term of deflation and big. So it's a big moment. We're gonna deflate it, and we're gonna deflate those big moments by handing over to John.
Yep, trying too hard, Chris. Don't worry about it. You're right. Okay.
Yeah, and screw you, Chris. It's going to deflate this moment by handing over to John. Well, my big moment is that love is in the air in Los Angeles. I did call it Sexy Penny Dreadful back for the original first 3 seasons, but I'm thinking, you know, love is in the air. But I kind of thought that was maybe a bit more in keeping. And definitely love is in the air in Los Angeles. You know, we have a threesome, a sexy, sultry threesome, that segues from a coat fitting. We have a twosome that looks very wholesome and, sort of ethereal in a sense. There's date night as well. And we have the love scene involving wood. And by that, I mean a wood. But it probably does involve Peter Craft's own wooden implement as well, shall we say. But he is,
I'm sorry. This is because I pointed out that this is a PG podcast, isn't it? That's the reason why you guys have gotten so innuendo heavy in this episode. I'm sorry.
Innuendo.
I'm sorry, listeners. I really am.
All right, let's all come back to being adults. Yes.
Yeah, we'll try.
We'll try.
So, I think to begin with, you know, we have, I'm going to go Elsa and Peter first of all, because, you know, right at the start, we see Elsa effectively picking a blood bag for herself, so that she can kill this poor unfortunate, effectively pass him off as her husband, Mr. Branson, in order so that she can effectively ensnare Peter more, or bring him deeper to her, so to speak. And I think, that was kind of interesting that they ended off making love on the freshly dug open grave of this poor unfortunate from the bar, just after they buried him. But the one thing I did really, really enjoy about the scene was just because they're both from Germany. The setting, the lighting of it all was really, it felt Brothers Grimm. It felt like you would see, it was moonlit and all this kind of thing. And I thought, the two of them, they're the immigrants from Germany, these tales from their own childhood, from their culture of the Brothers Grimm. And it felt very Brothers Grimm, and it was a grim act in that he was hiding this dead body as a doctor. So, I mean, that's even worse. I mean, it literally is, to protect Elsa. He certainly has no love lost for Mr. Branson, given what web of tales and lies that have been spun by Elsa. But it ended off with them, frolicking on this freshly dug grave.
Yeah. That was truly grim. Just quickly, you've been referring to this guy that she murdered as a poor unfortunate. They were of great pains to point out this is someone that was just wanted to go home, have sex with her, and hurt her at the beginning of the episode. Even though this is a demon Magda, the guy that she picked up from the bar, they also did highlight that he's probably not the greatest of people himself as well. So didn't deserve to be murdered and stuffed into a grave, and then have two people have sex on top of that grave as well. Yeah. But
I think that's where I'm coming from. I think no matter what his sexual preference may have been, because it could have been for bondage, in which case that's what all she could have been asking, you're going to hurt me. So it could have been whips and chains and all this kind of stuff. It could have been slings, you name it. Then there's nothing, people consent on that. Her whole plan was so that he would play dirty with her. She would have those red marks, those bruises, in order to make the scene that she sets more convincing for Peter Kraft.
True.
And he has no love for Mr. Branson, as I say, from her tales. But in the end, this was not Mr. Branson. This is not her husband. Frank, indeed, is still inside her, rather than he has gone out to play and stay over somewhere. He is literally, just snuggled into her belly, effectively.
I love that Peter didn't ask any questions at all when she said, I've sent Frank away, and you just get Peter kind of going and just moves on with the conversation about the murder of the husband, because he doesn't really care at all. She told him in the past that she has 0 friends, 0 family, and can't escape Mr. Branson. So where would she have possibly sent Frank off to? The only other people that she seems to know in LA are Peter and his kids. So he left them behind to join her. So, but he wasn't going to ask any questions. It seems fine enough to him. And now we know how weird Dr. Kraft is. Sex on the grave of a person you've just buried. I don't know. That just seems excessively weird.
It felt like a quickie. It felt like the moment overtook them. Certainly maybe for him, because he's obviously been trying to distance himself from what happened at the party, playing happy families, playing sorry with his kids and his wife, and his wife, Linda, kind of says, I thought we were trying to make a go of it, like a fresh start. You almost got that sense. And then
she, thought of happiness couldn't last.
In true fashion, puts the face on, lights up a cigarette when he basically is not convincing her of why he's about to leave, to go off to hospital.
Three quick things from this one. The first one is, I love Magda's version of the TikTok swipe challenge. That's exactly what happens in this. She's just walking as Magda through. It was just so flawlessly done, the transition from Magda to Elsa, to the point where I was like, oh, how did they just get everyone to, and freeze now, stay exactly in those positions for the next 15 minutes while we change.
Pretty much, I'm sure. I was going to actually ask you to explain what a TikTok challenge is, Chris, because I'm old. But I think I get that one. I think I understand what that would be.
It's basically they swipe in front of the camera and they changed
There you
them. On the bruising and the things like that, it is Magda, so she's able to create any facade, anything. So very much the blood bag was just that.
Yeah.
She needed a body. But I've been wondering, and I've brought it up before, what is the end goal with Peter? And I'm starting to think, again, it's join Chris with his crazy delusions and ideas of where the story might be going. Could it be that he was a Nazi doctor in Essen? A Nazi doctor who potentially did some very bad things with gas or chemicals or XYZ. And Elsa is going to bring him along and like basically, because he it's not like he can do anything with the Nazis party, not the actual the bad Nazis, but the Union Nazi party. Could it be that he, like, potentially it's like he was a gas doctor or something like that, and that's where she's going to go, okay, now build me a bomb. That's the next step. It could be something like that. It's just she now has him hook, line, and sinker. So no matter what, she can go, you buried a body for me. You are mine.
Yeah, I mean, Linda talks about what he did in Essen with respect and his family. It is possible that he could have been a doctor at one of the earlier kind of forced labor camps and concentration camps. I think technically, while there was there wasn't as such an Auschwitz, I don't think by 1938. Not to say that I think Belsen and maybe some of the other ones were any better by any stretch of the imagination, but and certainly like Germany had these policies against people with disabilities and mental, physical, as well as for homosexuals, for gypsies. So it's something around then, but it would be interesting then why he would necessarily have moved from Germany to America. I agree. I think this still has the most, or a lot of legs to go to really understand how he inserts into this. Because I think from a personal point of view, yeah, he's hook, line, and sinkered here. Like, he's caught between a rock and a hard place. She could tell Linda. Linda's kind of warned Magda. You know, it's difficult how this German-American bond fits in as well. You know, we've only fleetingly seen them and to what extent they fit in. But, it's
like, I presume that's where the connection is going to come to Sister Molly, is between the Bund trying to get access to the radio stations and Sister Molly being so big on the radio stations. That's where they're going to get in. And maybe that's Elsa needs to have a voice there. Remember, Peter's the voice of this group as well. So he's most likely going to be the person that would be speaking on those radio broadcasts. Yeah. So potentially being the person, the word in his ear for what he's to say to the nation once it's open on the airwaves, when those two stories connect. Because again, Molly's the same. Molly doesn't have any direct connection to the Magdas, over here. And she doesn't really have that connection to the supernatural, I suppose, in some senses. There's other stuff that we will talk about as we get into her story from the episode, but no specific version of Magda is side by side with Molly or her family at the moment. So, so potentially that's the connection between them. As far as Peter goes, I always just assumed over the course of the series so far that he's been in the US for over 10 years because his eldest son is 10. So I just assumed he's been in America for those 10 years. So that's a long time back, leaving Essen, 1928, 1929 kind of thing.
It could be something around the First World War, possibly, rather than anything to do with the lead up to the Second World War. Yeah.
So I'm not even sure from Linda's warning to Elsa, I'm not even sure whether it's that scary a reason that he's done something really bad in Essen, or whether it's just trying to warn off a woman that's trying to steal your husband because she already stole them from his ex-family.
It could be simply
it's just trying to warn off the other woman that I was the other woman once and he's leaving me for you, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It could be that.
I suppose time will tell. That's the thing. We're halfway through the season, and time will tell now of the coming episodes.
But speaking of Germans, we also have Townsend's German take-in with a Chinese takeout. Yeah, it's date night for Councilman Townsend with Kurt. this, again, I think was kind of interesting. It just put a different light on Councilman Townsend.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's any less abhorrent or whatever, but it's in a sense that you see a little bit of a more bounce in his step. He's thinking about his appearance because obviously Kurt has injected a fair amount of sort of self-confidence into him, and fire. Exactly. I love the fact that you see him dancing to the tune. It kind of reminded me in front of the mirror as a kid, kind of bopping away or singing to a pop song. I like that kind of that he was doing that, and then he's surprised to see Kurt there with the takeout in his hand, and we have date night at Townsend's gaff.
And the dancing is beautifully styled as well.
It's really good.
It's like he's trying to emulate like a Frank Sinatra type style when he's dancing along to the song. It's not just dancing in your bedroom; it's being happily dancing your best possible dance. That's what I kind of got from it. Anybody else getting some kind of vibes about him that he's so in love with this idea that he's able to be with Kurt, that he kind of seems like he may push those boundaries a bit. He may come out. If this wasn't 1938, he seems like he may want to admit this to the world until Alex gives him a little snap back.
Yes, exactly.
It feels like he's almost kind of going, oh, who cares? I found the person I love. Does it matter? It seems like he's just at that point where he's about to push over the edge until Alex goes, hang on a second. What's going to be said about this? What your father's going to say, what Councilwoman Beck is going to say, and how she's going to use this against you. It just felt like he was genuinely going to be possibly a first step in a path to freedom for homosexuality in a way, because he seems like he's going to go and this is amazing, I can tell the world, and she's like, nope, don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, I just think it's a really kind of nice way of approaching Townsend's character from a different point of view, and in a sense, it's his own self-esteem. And after that knockdown from Alex at his office, he's surprised, and pleasantly, you can see the little kind of smile, the unexpected arrival of Kurt with the Chinese takeout. It, to me, felt like it was out of the blue for him, because he wasn't expecting.
He said that he was waiting in for him, that's why he put the tie on.
Maybe, but I know even with Kurt saying, he makes that point of nice tie, and like, has he been prepped by Alex? These kind of sort of things. So you see that Townsend is being used, and I think it's one of the great things about Penny Dreadful in the past is that they can throw light and shade onto characters. It may not be that you like them anymore, but they always kind of give their perspective. You always are told the reasons or the justification as to why someone is doing what they're doing. I think with Townsend's case, it's, there is discrimination, there is bias and inherent prejudice there. But maybe no more than most Americans at that time. But he's also power hungry. He's doing this to further his position. And I think just to come back from that and see him in his own bubble of his own home, dancing, enjoying himself, being taken aback and surprised by Kurt arriving, I just thought it's a nice little change in tack for this character.
Yeah. God, that home was amazing as well.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it was really
I was just like, that was the biggest takeaway for me. I was like, oh my god, I really wish I could live in 1930s LA, just for the architecture and the house by itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll put my hand on my heart. After complaining about the extended dance scenes previously in this season, this was perfect for me. This just gave a nice spring in the step to the character. And John, as you said, it's not about trying to make you like a villain. Like, he is a villain.
Exactly.
But at the same time, they humanize him by going, no, this man has found a forbidden love that is, in that word, a love in his mind. We know that potentially Alex is steering this with the Germans, the Nazis, in order so that his German take-in with the Chinese takeout is manufactured, and to keep him indoors, to keep him going to his midnight rendezvous in the park. I think potentially the plan, as you said, like he could have been, based on this, one of the first characters back in, potentially in the days, to like be out and proud, obviously. That is probably too far for Alex. That's not what they wanted with this plan. This was to put him in control.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she has to remind him. And that, even that reminder does little to quench that flame. So it will be interesting to see how this may blow back in her face. I think one of the themes they may explore is that even though Elsa, and Magda, I should say, whispers in the ears of the characters and prods them in the direction, she can't control them. And that's something we've seen. She gets angry when human will exerts itself.
Yes.
And they don't do what she has whispered for them to do. We saw this before, where she literally, as Alex and then Magda, blew out all the windows. Because she's getting angry. And I think that's a theme where we'll see towards the end, which is no matter how much evil prods us and whispers us, like human will win out sometimes. Human love, etc.
I think just quickly as well for me, I think from a writer's perspective, giving this idea that, you know, like you're talking about free will, but also seeing Townsend possibly in a way that it almost giving him this other dimension means it always kind of leaves the possibility open that Townsend could change his mind, that he's not this straitjacketed villain, that there is always the potential from his own experience by being homosexual that he may actually begin to be able to empathize. He may also not, of course, but I think that's a really good writing device because it does always allow you and leave you options of which direction this character can go.
Exactly.
Within the show. And that is why I always think it's great when they show these different sides, in Penny Dreadful.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like they're just so good at doing that. You know, it's one of the things that John Logan really is great at doing. Is just creating these kind of multi-layered characters. You know, just really interestingly, Michael Gladis was doing the live tweet for Penny Dreadful: City of Angels the other night. The actor who plays Councilman Townsend. This whole scene was also choreographed by Tommy Tong, the Irish choreographer who did the big dance sequence from episode 3, Chris. But I think one of the things that he was talking about was what he loves about Penny Dreadful. What Michael Gladis was saying, what he loves about Penny Dreadful is they're also using dance as one of the languages of the show, much like all of the other languages of all the main characters in the show. They're using dance itself as a language within the show. So I just thought that was a really interesting note. This dance itself is called the Broken Hearted Soft Shoe. Is the dance that was created for the show. So you may be right. The idea that he was at home alone and then decided to put on the record and dance because he's alone. And then that's when Kurt arrives. Potentially that's exactly the thing. He's feeling alone, feeling like he's able to do a little, have a little moment with himself effectively.
Yeah.
And then Kurt turns up and makes him even happier. So yeah, but learned to dance in 3 weeks after only doing one class of tap when he was younger. So I think he did a great job.
Yeah,
really
good stuff. Good stuff. I think the other big love element, probably less love, certainly one side of it, more sexy, raunchy, sensual, hot, passionate, is we've got the Pacheco threesome. All initiated by a desire to wash the blood of Officer Riley off Mateo's body. And then on undressing, Rio gets other ideas. And we have Fly Rico come in and join them, which I know we had discussed about, because maybe he'd been, been on the streets, he had been a survivor, he had done his, you got the sense that he had been a gigolo on the streets and that effectively he would earn his money wherever, but also maybe that he just had that taste, or is gay. But certainly here we see he's bisexual, and is enjoying is being the other slice of bread to Rio and Mateo's ham sandwich, I suppose.
It's by Rico, not Fly Rico.
It is by Rico, indeed. But, the really interesting thing here, I think 2 points for me is one, just how at the same time it's contrasted. So, you have these oranges, these yellows, the fieriness of this Pacheco threesome, and you contrast it with the fairly cool tones of Tiago and Molly. Just pure visual, it's suggestive. You get the sense of the Holy Spirit with Molly and Tiago, both of them in some ways potentially touched by spirits, the hand of God, Santa Muerta, whatever. And with Pacheco, it's this visceral, sensual side of things, and in both cases, potentially it's certainly in one of them, it's lovemaking for power. Rio is reinforcing her message she talks about of the children of the sun, that he shouldn't hold on to killing and have no regret for killing Officer Riley, effectively by making him feel great immediately afterwards. Like if he kills another 4 or 5 people and she does that with Fly Rico, is like, well, I'll go off and kill 4 or 5 more people. But, her whole sort of speech about him being my warrior, my avenging angel, that it's goodbye to that former self of yours, welcome in the new powerful, confident Mateo. Don't feel weak anymore. And this is reinforcing that through the sex, the sensuality of it. It's literally massaging not only his ego, but a few other things. This is the power play. This is to make him her warrior. It's the reward in a sense. And with Tiago and Molly, you get the sense that it is equally consensual, but you're just wondering, is there something else around Tiago and Molly? Because it seems very different to the threesome. It feels much more a standard husband and wife almost. But I suppose in the conversation that Molly has with Tiago, is she trying to reinforce her own position here to Tiago? So I think Penny Dreadful has used sex, it's used love really interestingly, and as a real force of nature for not just the act itself, but in showing these other power plays and feelings and positions that people can have in society. And this I thought was just very much along those lines. And I thought it was really nicely done with the contrast between the threesome and the twosome effectively.
Yeah.
Like the real pillars of Penny Dreadful have always been love, sex, death, and horror, basically. So, getting most of them in this one episode.
Yeah.
Good one, John. Good point. Chris, do you want to take us on to your big moment for the episode?
Yep. Very much mine is about Tiago and how he slips. He's slipping further and further from being this honorable officer, this pillar of justice that Michner describes him as being to Mama Vega. Like Michner describes why he was happy to work with Tiago, and we see the fall of Tiago. It's starting to, he is crumbling that honorable officer. So first of all, as John just described, the soapy dishes did lead to a slip in the bedroom of the holiday home. And it's not just it's Molly, it's the fact that it's a suspect. It's like, in theory, you're breaking one of the core tenets of being a police officer. You are getting romantically involved with a suspect, and unbeknownst to him, the suspect is lying.
Yeah.
He's caught her in lies multiple times now.
Yeah.
And
this episode particularly, they call out one big one,
Yeah. Do you want to, you just quickly jump in on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like the scene when they're lying in bed after they've had sex and they're having the conversation, where Molly learns of Santa Muerta's touch on Tiago, and then tells him the story of her mother saving her when she was younger by finding some men who were able to help them out and shelter them for the night. Turns out to be a lie, because the story is retold to Josephina when they meet, before Molly learns that Josephina is Tiago's sister. She tells her the story of exactly the same night, and it ends in a very different way. It ends with her being left alone with some of the older men who abuse her, and her mother either cares nothing for it or is giving payment in the front of the van herself, in some way. But it sounds like she's laughing in the front of the van, drinking with somebody else and leaving her 10-year-old daughter alone with two men in the back of the van. So she tells Tiago this story so that he will go easy on her dragon mother, as she says. She's specifically covering up the truth to try and sell her mother as a nicer person than she is, and someone that may not be capable of the murders that she's, at this stage, probably committed on the Hazlitt family.
So my part is, you're led to believe, based on the way that is portrayed, that one of these stories is true. Most likely the one where Molly says this to the sister. Yeah. I'm starting to believe that neither are true. That Molly, she spins this web. She is a showwoman. So that we're kind of, that she is, to all intents and purposes, an actress. And as part of that, she is able to weave seamlessly, like, lines of dialogue. And I do believe that both of these are lies. And when she knows and finds out that Tiago is the brother, she gets, oh God, I may be caught in a lie. Both of these, if they ever discuss. And I think that's kind of one of these parts where we do learn, as part I talk about the slip. It's not just Tiago's slip, but it's the slip of an actress.
Yeah, I think with Molly, I think it's that it feels like that classic 1930s, you know, when you see the some of the quotes from the Hollywood stars of the past, and it's like, give the public what they want, so that they themselves were always having to put on this facade. And I think that this is kind of that feeling with Molly. And so I think with Josephina, you know, she didn't know that Tiago was her brother when she told the story. So is it just this facade? It's that I'm here to make people feel better about themselves. I do this on a Sunday service, and that's the power of it. It's a spectacle. Everyone is uplifted. It hammers home the message. And that's what she does here. This is still her public face, even though she's been brought into her private, sort of rooms. This is still her public face to Josephina. And it's different to what Tiago, that this is what he wants to hear, that she's not brutally battered or bullied by her mother. So she's trying to almost console him. And at the moment, there's still elements of that I keep thinking about it. But the danger is that she is actually doing this purposefully, and that she is almost like a spin doctor as well. Yeah. You know, which side does it lie on? Yeah. Does it have the innocence behind it, or is it spin doctors? Yeah. And that's the really, interesting thing, I think, with Molly. But to your point as well, Chris, this is one of Tiago's slips here in this episode. You know, Lewis is always saying throughout this, you know, you're not telling me something, because he knows he can't tell him, or he shouldn't be doing it. I think Nathan Lane again is just like absolutely awesome in this. That suspicion that he has all the way through this, as they do their investigation, is just really, really, is so well done. And
I love how he plays it, because it's not just a suspicion. It doesn't sound like he's suspicious that Tiago might have been involved in the death of Riley. He's almost speaking for everybody else. He's kind of saying to him, look, you're in the department. You got here on your own merit, but if you don't stand up and give them nothing to question, then everybody will question you. Everybody will blame you if you don't come here beyond reproach. You know, he's saying, you know, there was definitely a declaration from war from the Mexican community in this city, and lo and behold, nobody could find you for 24 hours. You can't let that kind of stuff happen. Yeah. You know, I don't care where you were. I don't care if you were with a new girlfriend or anything like that. You need to be beyond reproach, or people will start to point the finger at you. So yeah, really like that kind of interplay between the two of them as the two of them meet up.
And the tee up as well for this, Chris, I think, is that opener when Tiago's just gotten off the bus, and they have that conversation, and Tiago just goes, I hope it's not Mexicans. And Michner goes, and if it is, and you have Tiago saying, we do our job. And of course, over the course of this episode, as you say, we see these slips from Tiago where he doesn't do his job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the second part of the slip, and sorry, before I even get to that, one thing I will say, and I assume you guys will agree with me, we've just spoke about Michner.
Mm-hmm.
I've known Nathan Lane for years. For me, he's always been a very much a character actor.
You've never introduced him to us.
Sorry, I've never introduced him. Yes, you know, we summer in the Hamptons. But he's always been a very, he's been to a degree, a typecast actor. He's known for very theatrical Broadway style, or potentially, and I'm not being derogatory here, a very camp, over the top characters. So Birdcage, etc., or his Modern Family character, etc. This for me is like just really, it's just this, oh my God, breakout kind of character, kind of acting for me that I did not know he was capable of. And this is not meant as a slight. This is just showing the range that, oh my God, this actor is fantastic.
Just really good. Yeah,
really
good.
That's all. I had to get that out because I was just like, every episode, I'm like, oh my God, this is even better. He's just.
Mm-hmm. No, really good. Really good.
Yeah. So the second slip up that we discuss, and we'll scoot along quite quickly on this, which is where we meet Fly Rico's squeeze. We're not sure if it's baby mama, but definitely, a female friend, potentially girlfriend, for Fly Rico.
Yeah, I think they just say that she's very close. And
Yeah.
that's it. And then she goes, well, his mom's close. She's just down the road, which is a
But
great
she's
comeback.
blind.
Yeah.
But this is where he starts to overstep his line a bit as a police officer. He's verging towards Riley territory. He basically threatens deportation.
Yeah.
With
not
the
as far as
child
Riley.
there. No, but it's starting to kind of go towards that because he's become derogatory. He's going to separate the child and the mother and kind of throw her back to Mexico. And it's very much to the jargon of Michner, because it's like, no, you're an honorable officer. You believe in justice. We don't step over that line. We are police officers. And this is where you start to see, as I said, the slip or the breaking of Tiago. It's the fall, because he's, with the additional mounting pressures, his beliefs start to crack. He's not shattered, but he's cracking.
Yeah, and I think just having come from Sophia's, where they get Fly Rico's name, and there's the suggestion that it could be Mateo with the plaster, the bandage around his thumb. He's gone to Raul, presumably with that suggestion. And you know that Michner was asked effectively to leave that room whilst they discuss it further.
Yeah.
All on the pretense that it was actually, well, where does Fly Rico live? Raul could have answered that in seconds, probably. But also they needed to discuss how they manage the family issue that's happened now that there's this suspicion.
I feel like Raul may not have given up Fly Rico, though. No. Even though his brother's a police officer, I think he wouldn't have given up unless convinced with the fact that Mateo may have joined them and may now be in trouble. Yeah,
possibly. Yeah. And then with approaching Bernadette Romero like this, I thought it was really interesting because, as you say, Lewis does kind of go, hang on a second, Tiago. He is that shocked, and then gives his little story about Frederick March, the actor, who won the Academy Award for Dr. Jekyll and Hyde.
Oh, yeah.
Lewis is absolutely not sure, hence that wonderful speech that we've opened the podcast with about Tiago's frame of mind here at all. He knows there's something at him, or it's something for as probably as far as Lewis can determine to do with the fact that he wasn't able to contact him for 24 hours. He feels it's connected to the Riley case potentially. Little does he know probably that it's connected through his family, through Mateo.
Right.
So I thought that was a nice little nod. And I think just that nice little reference back to the fact that you have Dr. Jekyll in the original Penny Dreadful. There's no connection here whatsoever, but it is just simply that, just that nice little literature reference, I suppose, from
Well,
my side.
hang on, because you're stealing my notes here, John, by a wide margin, because this is massive for Penny Dreadful fans. The fact that they've mentioned a movie version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, because Dr. Henry Jekyll was in season 3 of Penny Dreadful. So this completely separates Penny Dreadful City of Angels from the original Penny Dreadful, right? Because
Yeah, absolutely.
there's now a fictional character called Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde that was made into a movie in the real world, which is where this Penny Dreadful City of Angels was based. So unless it had a tag on that movie saying based on a true story from the 1800s, then it's a completely different universe. We will definitely, this is first confirmation, we will definitely not see Dorian Gray walk past in the background of this show.
So I don't know if that's no. I want to say yes, but what I very much as part of me is what I can see John Logan saying and turning around and going, well, there are plenty of cases in history where a real life person lived and had actions, and these very fanciful novelizations of their actions and their speeches and stuff became a book and was translated into popular fiction later on. So I can see him saying something along those lines and going, no, this is still in the same world. Look at this big book that other people discuss.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting with a different writer on the show, not John Logan, that's the line that made it through for this cut of the episode. So I wonder if John Logan was sitting there going, hang on a second, after he read the script.
Maybe. I mean, for me, it's a nice touchback reference to the original, for sure.
Yeah, interesting. Since this is Chris's point, let's get back to Chris on his third
the final bit, which is, this has annoyed me, and it's the final, what I think is, I would say, I don't want to say nail in the coffin or the straw to break the camel back or any other terrible euphemism. It's that he lets Mateo escape. So he chooses, so we have this beautiful scene where they run up the stairs, they catch the kid, and then I was like, well, okay, like, put him in cuffs or something. No, they still go upstairs.
Yeah. He was just a lookout. No use to them. And they stopped him running up the stairs to warn them. So
they got there. They break down the door, even though he was pretty sure that Mateo was going to be there. Like, cause he knew he was still had that terrible look of shock on his face. I was like, okay, well, you knew, but good acting. And then we get this great chase scene, but he chooses to chase Mateo.
Yeah.
Versus the other character.
Absolutely.
Versus Fly Rico. It was Fly Rico.
He was chasing Fly and Mateo.
Yeah.
And then as the two of them separated, he chose to go after Mateo. That's right, yeah.
He should, I don't know if he should have, but in my head, you go for the bigger fish. He should have gone for Fly Rico. But he doesn't, and then he lets Mateo go with sirens blaring in the background. And I'm like, run. This very much is it's like 101 cop. You do not let the suspect go. Like, he shot his brother to keep the law, to enact not justice. And yet he breaks the law for family. And I'm like, this seems like the foundations of the character are kind of shaking to a degree.
Yeah. And I think, he shot Raul to protect his partner, to protect everything kicking off like it was. Remember, Raul did kill 3 or 4 other officers before shooting, or did shoot at least a bunch of officers before shooting at his new partner, and that's why he shot him, basically. But he's freeing Mateo in a different way. Nobody's around him. Nobody will find out that he specifically said go to Mateo. Nobody will find out that he said run to Mateo. It's not like he's pushing him out the doors of the police department in LA in front of everybody else going, you're free. He can just say Mateo got away from him, or this unknown suspect got away from him. Lewis was behind him at the time. The shot was slowed down, so Lewis didn't actually see him for as long as you think he did. It's only about a millisecond that he saw this other kid in the background. And this was the only way he could be saved, really, is the reason why I think Tiago had to be the one to catch Mateo. He couldn't let Lewis go after him. If Lewis did actually catch him and he got arrested, bad things were going to happen. So yeah, I think he chased him down to let him go, effectively. But he wanted to know the answer. He wanted to know, did he commit the murder?
Yeah. I do think that this will lead to Rio. I had it wrong where I thought it was Raul versus Tiago in the brother versus brother prophecy.
I think we all thought that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think we were led to believe that, but actually it's going to be Mateo versus Tiago. Brother versus brother.
Well, next week's episode is called How It Is With Brothers. So definitely going to be learning more about the family Vega in that episode as well, and finding out, what is the tension between all three of them, really.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing for this, for me, was I just thought Daniel Zovatto was absolutely fantastic. It was a really powerful performance. You can see him battling between him as a detective and also then as the older brother of Mateo. But I think that's it. He lets him run, but he learns the truth. And I suspect that, that word with Raul as well, given the suspicion, could have been, you can't arrest him. It would destroy Maria, whatever it may be. And I think, he made the right choice to run after Florico and Mateo in that moment, because he's in the same room. Whilst there's no necessarily direct evidence then that he did the killing, he's obviously a huge person of interest, and the suspicion is falling on him, heavily, and he's a 1 in 4 option for any prosecutor. So, but I thought Tiago was excellent here, and I just think it's great for implications moving forward with his family, but in his job as a detective. He himself has put himself in a really difficult situation here, which I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
And interestingly, I suppose that's kind of how we close out this point, I suppose, really, is that they do have a member of Florico's gang in custody now, and it's Diego, the fourth member of the group.
Yeah.
His face as Rio closes the door is really priceless.
She leaves him behind, screaming after Rio to let him out. But I suppose, we as the audience know that it's Mateo, and then we know that he's had this conversation with his brother, and we know that he's taking credit for it. But right now, Diego is a very likely suspect. The chief of police seems to be reasonably happy with these types of cases being fulfilled with, a good enough suspect in here. And Diego was the kid that was being beaten up by Riley in the chair in the previous episode, as Tiago walked into the department and threatened to kill Riley, basically. So, this is someone that they could pin the murder of Riley on and just walk away. And all of this stuff goes away. Mateo gets away. Florico gets away. Yeah. He can easily just say he's the one that did the killing blow, and Diego's the one that has to take the pain, because he was involved as well. He was there, and he did hit Riley with some quite considerable blows as well. So
that's true.
This is how we basically end off the episode, is that while Mateo is free and while Tiago is telling him to run, they do have somebody in custody. So
yeah.
Yep.
We have talked about almost everything in the episode, but I wanted to just highlight one little element that we didn't specifically highlight because it's really interesting to me.
Specific?
It's quite specific, yeah, definitely. But I think in this show where the supernatural seems to be hidden in the background a little bit, more than it would have been when you're talking about the universal monsters, as a lot of the original Penny Dreadful was, very well-known monsters and very well-known creatures from the past and history and that kind of stuff. I think Rio talking to Mateo, when she's undressing him and getting him ready for his zoot suit, effectively, I think her actual speech to him, giving the fictional supernatural evolution of the Pachucos, is just fascinating, because she's effectively bringing the Pachucos back like as if they are the warriors of an ancient god. She's saying that they are the sons and daughters of the Aztec god that was unconquerable for 1,000 years and gave many blood sacrifices to keep in that place of power. His followers would give blood sacrifices. So effectively kind of equating what Mateo did by killing Riley as a blood sacrifice to keep the Pachucos alive. So I love how she's kind of combining all of this information together and effectively saying that they've risen from the ashes of the Aztec past, combining that with the arrival of the conquistadors from Europe and their own religion, similar, I think, as we talked about in episode 1 of this show, similar to the American gods idea, where multiple gods coming together, forming different and the same versions with just slightly different names, effectively.
Yeah.
This is how they merged a lot of religions together when Christianity came across from Europe into various different countries. They would take some of their deities and kind of twist them slightly and rename them as similar to their own deities within the Christian religion. So I loved this kind of idea that effectively Rio is, and we know she's a demon, Rio is talking to Mateo almost as Magda, saying, this is how our religion, the Pacheco religion, came to be, and you need to get rid of your Christian ways, this unreal God that you have. She pulls the cross off his chest, or the medal that's on his chest. She pulls that off his chest, telling him to give up on that God and go for her God and their God. So I thought that was a really interesting use of those historical religious practices and the combination of all of them, because I think it's probably the closest we've gotten to Magda having a conversation with a human.
Yeah.
In the show.
I do wonder if Magda is that God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's where, and she's basically getting a disciple. She's like, give up worshipping this Christ God figure and worship me. Pretty much is what she's saying. She needs a priest, if you will. Like, they have given her the blood sacrifice. Mateo did give her a blood sacrifice. So now it is no, you are one of my priests now. You are with me.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. And that's just why I thought it was so interesting, given it's a couple of lines of dialogue, but she's very specific about the historical details that she's giving. And it's not just, you'll get your zoot suit and we'll go out dancing every Saturday night and we'll make sure that nobody takes over the Mexicans, or anybody in the city. It is, this has stemmed back for millennia.
Yeah.
In the history of the Aztecs, the history of the Mexicans. We are now bringing it to America, and we are this religion. We're not just a dance group that are Christians dancing every Saturday night, up in the Crimson Cat, So I thought it was quite interesting. And it's interesting that you've also pointed that out, Chris, because it was something that I was saying to John when we watched this episode. There's something odd about Molly as well. Molly hasn't mentioned Christ over the course of these 5 episodes. She's mentioned God. She's mentioned higher powers. And in this episode, interestingly, just the wording of it, she says her mother introduced her to a powerful God. And I do wonder if that God will be named as Santa Muerta, or a Christian version of Santa Muerta in the future, or something like that. Or maybe not even a Christian version. She doesn't need to actually be Christian, to be honest. It's one of those ones where she's been choosing the words very carefully, that this deity that she worships may not necessarily be the Christian God.
So I think it might be Magda.
Maybe.
Because essentially we know the mother's bad, and potentially the mother introduced her to Molly to this God of Magda, which is, and that is the connection. That is that point, because that's the bit I was trying to figure. Yeah. Because I'm like, that whole side of it is godless in the meddling aspect. And I was going to bring up this, I was flirting with the idea that potentially the bodyguard was Magda in, or another, like, it was Frank all grown up, if you will.
Okay.
But I don't think that's 100%, because that's not, that the bodyguard isn't whispering.
Yeah.
It's, if anything, the mother's whispering to the bodyguard. Right. So I was like, well, potentially when Molly was in behind the curtain and in her state and stuff, she's just talking to Magda. Magda can be veiled to human senses. So maybe she's just there beside her.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. That's an option. And the reason why I was thinking Santa Muerta was possibly because I think twice now she's talked to Tiago, once about the actual marks that she sees in his skin in this episode, and instantly said that's a protection to him. And previously, the first time they met back earlier on this season, she said to him about Santa Muerta, he said, people tell me I saw her when I was a child. And she says, maybe you did. And doesn't seem to have any kind of judgment, doesn't seem to have any kind of, well, no, those deities don't exist. I'm a Christian. I believe in these deities, your deities don't exist, that kind of conversation. It's very respectful of the possibility that there are other deities, and that's why I'm wondering whether she does actually worship another deity like Santa Muerta. And that would also lead to a point where we will have Santa Muerta versus Magda through the humans that they're speaking through or talking with towards the end of the season. There you go. That's another theory.
It's a good theory, and you know me, I like my theories.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. That's it for my big moment from the episode, because I think we've covered almost everything else. The only other couple of little bits that we haven't talked about are Dottie meeting up with Brian Koenig in the episode.
And perhaps the end of Dottie, because we do see she is now being followed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, the one big gem from this episode that we have to make reference to is Lewis and meeting Maria Vega. It's just a really priceless scene between, I think, two real big heavyweights here. I love the fact he goes in and says, "You're not actually Jewish, are you?" You know, there's some really good fun here between the two, and almost him. You know, it was interesting when she said, "You know, you're the one I should be thanking. You had the guts to pick a Chicano to be your partner." And we know from the first or second episode where he said, "I just didn't have a choice." Although he, you know, where does the truth lie? And it may be that Maria has some insight through her, through praying to Santa Muerta. But that was just a fabulous moment between the two where she goes through all the different colors, different Santa Muertas for the different reasons why you pray to that particular one. I love the fact you've got that scary ass central Santa Muerta, and Lewis is like, "Look at her teeth," and she goes, "Yes, she's beautiful, isn't she?" And he's like, "Well, that's one way of saying it." Like, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call like the skull beautiful in that sense, but it was just really nice. I want to see more of Maria, for sure. I think, you know, to get presumably a bit more Santa Muerta here. I was going to say Santa Maria then. But this is, this was a great little scene between these two actors here. I thought it was a really nice moment between the two.
Definitely. I definitely want to see more of Maria Vega. She's such an interesting character. And as I mentioned earlier on in the season, seems massively powerful. Like, she describes her prayer to Santa Muerta as, "Santa Muerta is really powerful. Ask what you want and you get it." Well, there's not very many deities that anybody worships that can get you exactly what you want if you just pray for it. But it's happened twice now for Maria. She's just asked Santa Maria for whatever it is, and in she arrives. Is Maria Vega the actual embodiment of Santa Muerta? Another one. Is she another embodiment of her? Is she helping out Maria Vega specifically because she's a really powerful bruja, witch? Or is there some other connection there?
Yeah,
I don't
maybe.
know, but I want to see more Maria. She's a great actress too.
And also just that she does give Lewis a black Santa Muerta for protection. So, you know, what can it hurt, right? But I suspect Lewis may need to call on Santa Muerta's protection moving forward.
That little black idol will 100% come back to play.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because it was so prominent in the following scene of being on the hood of the car.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
like, all right. He's going to end up putting it in his pocket and it will deflect a bullet. Obviously, I know that won't happen because that's obviously too on the nose, but something along those lines will.
I think something like that. Yeah, I think you're about right, Chris. Anything else we haven't talked about from the episode?
Nothing for me. I think we covered most of it, and like the other remaining bits probably I don't want to bring up because, like always, I bring it up and literally in the next episode it's completely bashed down. So I'm waiting to see if one or two things pay off next episode, like exactly what has happened previously. So
yeah. So don't spoil your projections for what might happen. Yeah.
Anything from yourself?
Interesting to see Adelaide and Randolph still following Molly. Their conversation was just so mysterious that I couldn't work out anything of what they were talking about. I couldn't work out whether Adelaide was sending Randolph off to kill Tiago, which is how I expected the conversation to go. You know, is he going to do the same thing that they did with the Haslets? You know, is there something else going on there? But just so obscure as a conversation that I had no idea what exactly was happening between the two of them. We just know she's pretty evil, and Randolph constantly follows Molly, and they absolutely know about Tiago and Molly being together.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it is, as Miss Adelaide said, we know how this is going to end, don't we, Randolph? Now, whether that's because of an act that they do or plan, or it's something to do with Molly.
Yeah.
Given that we're a little unsure of whether possibly she's channeling Santa Muerta or Magda, that deity, we just don't know. So I think that's still kind of really intriguing. You know, what is Molly's shtick here? The other thing is, I did feel that Randolph perfectly played just that kind of, you know, great Hulk kind of character that sort of obeys the master. It did remind me of the supermarket attendants from Hot Fuzz. So I was expecting him to kind of say "yarp,"
Nice.
As he goes off to you know do his master's bidding, so to speak.
Or maybe the original Frankenstein's monster from the old movies in the 40s and 50s.
I was going to go Solomon Grundy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Solomon Grundy, Born on a Monday.
Yeah,
exactly. That, again, fictional, but based on historical, or not historical, but narrative-based kind of history.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, Hot Fuzz.
Yeah, that's better, yeah.
Yarp.
I instantly thought of the giant from Twin Peaks when I saw him. I just think he has that kind of look about him. So, yeah. A couple of the quick notes for the episode before we go on to some feedback. One from a previous episode that I only learnt about this week, which I thought was fascinating. We just didn't comment on it at all. Do you remember when Louis Michner leaves the bodies of his friends in the morgue and goes up the stairs and rips his lapel off while crying, effectively, while mourning the loss of his friends? That's actually a Hebrew act known as kriya.
Oh.
Effectively, it's a striking expression of grief at the loss of a loved one. I just had never heard of it before, so I just didn't realize how realistic and accurate, I suppose, that moment is. He's specifically showing his grief in this manner.
That's great.
Yeah. Definitely had that connection with the opening scene of this episode, as Magda lures her blood bag, as you are calling this man, when she walks into the bar, lures this guy towards her. Definitely felt like the character Billie Piper played in Penny Dreadful, Lily, where she went to the bar, picked up a guy, took him home and killed him. Felt exactly like a beat directly back from the original Penny Dreadful there.
Yeah, the resemblance of that was striking, but for sure. I think otherwise the only notes from myself was just that on those other colours of Santa Muerta, we had gold for wealth, white for purity of heart, red for love, green for justice, and black for protection against kind of evil spirits or just evil in general.
Mm-hmm. I did love the little touch with Maria saying that none of her children believe in Santa Muerta, except for Raul. Of course, Raul believes in Santa Muerta.
He is Santa Muerta.
He was brought back by her zombie brother.
Zombie bros!
You know. So I do like that she just calls out that Raul does believe in Santa Muerta. So, yeah.
Well, someone's got to. So, gentlemen, I think with that, let's move on to our final thoughts for this episode. Derek, what did you think of Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, Episode 5, Children of the Royal Sun?
I love when we get to the halfway point of a season and all I can say about an episode is it's even better than last week, which I loved, because that means that the show's doing something right. Every episode has been better and better. Every character has been more and more developed, and some fantastic things happened in this episode. I thought this was excellent. Just right up there, exactly where I wanted to be. Lots of interesting, intriguing things going on with all of the characters. And yeah, this fall for Tiago, or this character of Tiago, you know, you can understand behind all of this is someone that's worked every day of his life to get into the position where he is, the first ever Chicano LAPD detective in this position, and now everything's falling apart around him and he's struggling to hold on to his integrity and his honesty because of everything that's going on in the city. And I think it's a really interesting story for this season. So brilliant performances, really interesting stuff going on. Loving this episode. Looking forward to the rest of the season.
Excellent. Johners, what did you think of episode 5?
I absolutely, I love this. For me, it's 4.5 Haymarket anarchists out of 5. Little one for Dottie there. I think, for me, when I first watched it, I came at it purely from that gem of a scene between Lewis and Maria, to be honest. And I really liked these two wise, beings sort of just sharing their wisdom, their thoughts and so on around Tiago. But I think Tiago, it was great having him much more central in this episode, really getting our teeth into Tiago and what he was doing and just how he is proving himself to be human, and slipping, as you said, Chris. I loved again that Penny Dreadful provides, a look into how people are behaving, and that through the eyes of love or sex. And I think this was really, really good to see. I think the speech by Rio to Mateo is massively powerful, to him. He is no regrets Mateo after she has that speech, delivers it to him, for him, and then beds him effectively, to really hammer it home. But again, Tiago learning the truth about his younger brother and making the decision to let him run, really great stuff, all around here. So looking forward to see how the capture of Diego pans out, for, next week's episode.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, a really good episode. Chris, what did you think overall?
I can't say much more outside of what you gents have already said. I'm starting to eat the crow, in that I have said over time that, I was like, yeah, parts of this is dragging for me. I made a joke before we started recording. I was like, yeah, this episode had nothing. It's going to be an easy one. We'll knock it out in 40 minutes. Although nothing significant, I'll give you the perfect example. Last night, I watched a Netflix film called Extraction, which is about 2 hours of non-stop abs, action, fight, car scenes, just go, go, go. It's just assaulting the senses. The story is there, but it's not really what you're going to that film for. We're going to Penny Dreadful for the story. And I feel that part of me was like, okay, I need a bit more, not wham bam kind of action, but I felt it just needed a bit more. What I'm finding is the actual slow burns are paying off, as the deeper you get into the season. So, my millennial instant gratification sometimes just needs to take a back seat and just understand that a good writer like John Logan and in this case Jose Rivera, they know what they're doing. They're taking me on a journey and I need to respect that. So yeah, I can't say much more. I want to see where it goes now. And I think that's the kind of the core. But I've had enough, discussion of rape, if that's okay with everyone. We'll top that. We're good for now. It's just hard to watch and listen to. So, there we are. Those are our thoughts on episode 5, Children of the Royal Sun. But gentlemen, I think it's time we move on to some feedback. I don't know why I sound like a radio jockey. Not even a good jockey, a shock jock.
It's the intention always when you're sitting in front of a microphone, yes. Chris, that's all. Yes, over to Penny for your thoughts. Feedback section for our Petty Dreadful podcast. A quick apology to begin with for Jared Wilkins, who did send in this feedback last Monday. We had recorded our podcast, but I normally am able to throw in our feedback if we get it in a little bit late. I'm normally able to throw it in after we've recorded the episode, but I had a few technical issues last week, which meant I couldn't record. I could only edit the podcast. So, What Jared said was on episode 4 last week. He says, concerning where we stand at the end of this episode, I think that Tiago has to decide whether or not he wants to arrest Molly for the Hazlitt murders and his own brother Mateo for Raleigh's murder. It seems that what will likely happen and what suits his best interest is that he will find a way to pin all of these murders on Fly Rico, as he's the leader of the Pachecos. So he looks good for all of these murders, and it might help him to better pull his baby brother Mateo out of the Pacheco gang if they're leaderless. It's not what I want to happen, but I'm also trying to fill in the holes. Nathan Lane, in an interview with Gold Derby, let slip that in episode 6, Detective Michner and Tiago have done something regrettable, and he tells Tiago that in these times there are no clean deeds. There's only dirty deeds and less dirty deeds. That could easily mean pinning the Hazlitt murders on someone less deserving. So, interestingly, he mentions this interview with Nathan Lane saying that they've done something despicable in episode 6. I think they've done this is the despicable thing, right? This is freeing of Mateo as kind of against the rules of police officers. So I don't think it's any spoiler there.
No, but wait and see.
Yeah, thanks, Jarrett, for that. Yeah, I think it's all going to get really, really muddy for Nathan Lane and for Tiago. Even Nathan Lane has his little side project with the Nazis and with obviously Brian Koenig, as we saw in episode 5, where he's asked Dossie to keep up the observation of him.
Mm-hmm.
But Tiago, yeah, I think what with his the powerful presence of his mom, of Raul, and possibly his own feelings, then yeah, it sounds like it's gonna get messy for him in particular. I like the suggestion as well that, you know, what he wants to do, whether he wants to arrest Molly for the Hazlitt murders or not, or whether he's going to pin it on Fly Rico. And, you know, it comes back to Chris's point about Tiago's fall, in a sense, that he had such pure aspirations, you know, when being pushed by Vanderhoff about concluding it, he goes, well, you want us to solve it. Him and Lewis both saying, well, we're going to investigate it and solve it, not just pluck a Mexican name out of the air and pin it on them. Yeah. And yeah, if that's what they do, in episode 6, potentially with Diego, for both, the murder of Officer Riley, but potentially then for the Haslets. You know, 2 birds with 1 stone, easy win. It's concluded on all fronts. Then it's going to be something tragic for sure.
Exactly.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions, as they say.
Dirty deeds. Yeah, I do think that's
Jared.
where they're going. I think there's dirty deeds and less dirty deeds, and in this case, they need to shut it down as the captain wants and requests.
Absolutely. Thanks so much again, Jared, for that. I'm sorry that we didn't get it in the last episode.
Yes, thank you so much. We also received an email from our roving reporter in the field in LA, good old Jim Picanisco. He had this to say: gentlemen, wow, episode 4 was outstanding and traumatic. I have no specific location info to share this week, other than to say Pasadena is now a scarier place to live. Well, what? Like, if you're a roving reporter, Jim, come on, you need location. You're roving in location. That's why we have you. Anyway, Jim went on to say, the Florence Moore appearance was truly frightening, but what happened to Josephina was even more difficult to watch. Credit the great actors. Just so devastating, and the revenge scenes were horrifically brutal. Made me consider how neat and clean so many of these types of scenes are typically shot. Nice, clean, throat slit. I can recall 3 or 4 of them in Game of Thrones. Not on Penny Dreadful, just a realistic mess. Impactful. Theory on where this is headed: Molly equals Magda, Josephina equals Santa Muerte, or vice versa. You guys are great. Jim, Pasadena, California. We should start signing that off as Jim, our roving reporter in the field, Pasadena, California. Yes, thank you so much.
Might have to send him some money if he's going to be employed by TV podcast industries. But then again, none of us get paid for it. So
no, exactly. This is all about the love. Absolutely. The love in this case of Penny Dreadful.
Thanks, Jim, for that. I like the idea that Josephina could be Santa Muerte as well. I know Chris had mentioned about Molly being Magda rather than Santa Muerta. But yeah, then is it? I just kind of thought that Molly was kind of the Holy Spirit. She was the strict Christian form of I suppose, Santa Muerta or the Holy Spirit and in Christianity. Or holy I don't even know myself. It's been such a long time since I went to Sunday school. But I really like I like this idea because that would certainly play nicely with the fact that she's from the Vega family, with the influence and presence of her mum. And certainly Molly is that darker edge then that possibly she has here. I like that theory.
It's a really interesting theory. Thanks so much again for the feedback, Jim.
Yes, thank you again,
yeah,
Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
We're also able to publish your dulcet tones on our podcast. And if you want to hear your voice on the podcast, you can record a clip of yourself on your phone and email it to us. Or you can go to our website, tvpodcastindustries.com, and record up to 90 seconds of your thoughts about that week's episode. If you want to email it, you can email it to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. But we, of course, have our returning voicemailer, Steve Brown from Panels to Pixels podcast. If you have a chance, check it out. It is a great listen. But Steve had this to say about Penny Dreadful.
Yeah, he liked this one. He sent in 2 voicemails. I'll play the both of them back to back.
Good morning, TV Podcast Industries. This is Steve. And, gosh, this episode was so good. I'm about to watch it again, but I wanted to throw a couple of thoughts in before I do. First, Derek, you finally get to say not written by John Logan. And, I loved seeing the change from Magda to Elsa there in the dance club, and we don't see what happens with that gentleman. I don't think. I'm about to watch it again, so I'll find out. But just wanted to send those a couple initial thoughts in before I watch it for a second time. Okay, talk to you in a bit. So they're starting to make us question Molly's maybe intentions. Maybe is she just manipulative because she tells 2 different versions of that story. One to Tiago, and then a different one to his sister. And I'm starting to see, is Magda supposed to represent like kind of the devil, to where she's corrupting individuals as well as these bigger groups? And what is the end game with Peter Kraft? I'm interested to see what connections he has besides the Bund that we might see here. So I'm curious. I've got to finish the second watch, but I wanted to get all this sent in this morning before things got busy. Okay, love the podcast. Thank you so much for the shout out to my podcast, and can't wait to hear what you guys thought of this one. Talk to you later.
Thank you so much, Steve. That was not planned. I had not heard your voicemail before I gave that shout out again. So nice. You're welcome.
Absolutely. Will we give Steve's second voicemail play, and then we'll talk about his thoughts?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey guys, sorry to send a second voicemail, but I'm in the middle of watching the second time, and 2 things occurred to me that I thought was really, really cool, and I wanted to share very quickly. First off, when Tiago says to Michner that he didn't cause the death of Jimmy Riley, that's definitely a reference to the fact that Michner kind of caused the death of that man in the last episode that the mobster killed. And then when little Frank says, "Isn't that cheating?" and his dad kind of gives a double take about the whole cheating thing. Okay, talk to you later. This is it. Last one.
You can send as many as you like, Steve. Really like your voicemails overall. But yeah, I definitely caught that one with the kids when they said, "Dad, isn't that cheating?" to Peter Kraft, and he was like, "I got a second. What do they mean by that?" Like that. Yeah, interesting with Lewis referencing the fact that he caused the death of someone the previous episode. But I don't know, Lewis Mister, did he cause the death of the guy at the end of the last episode? He caused the death of his 2 friends by making them follow the Nazis up into the mountains, and they got killed by the Nazis they were following, I suppose. So maybe he's maybe that's the deaths that he's regretting.
It could be. Additionally, as well, I think that we may find out that there has been other Nazi hunters who have lost their lives so far. But again, we're at the halfway mark. I think this is the beginning where we start to find the dirty deeds of everything.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Steve, for that. I think the Tom and Trevor with the game of sorry and cheating, I think that was a really kind of nice little subtle touch to that. The guy, Mr. Benson, who was taken home by Elsa, he certainly did die.
The fake Mr. Benson, yes.
Fake Mr. Benson. Yeah. He is gone.
Mm-hmm. And Magda's the devil, I think. Yeah, I think Magda's a demon. We'll see. Yeah, definitely a representation of that. But was my most interesting point of the episode, I think, was Rio's version trying to tempt Mateo away from his Christianity to follow some ancient gods. Just thought that was an interesting little touch in this show as well. So, some great points. Thanks very much, Steve. Hopefully we'll hear from you again for next week's episode. Our last thing to do in this episode, as always, is a lot of people's favorite part of this episode, our Penny Dreadful pub quiz.
Yes, fellow Dreadfuls, it is the Dreadful pub quiz. Remember, once you've had a 10-cent dance, grab a bottle of wine, head home for a good old Chinese dinner for this week's pub quiz. Yes. The question for episode 5 of Penny Dreadful is, what swashbuckling action movie was advertised when Tiago and Lewis went to visit Officer James Riley's Sonora Town honey, Sophia? So I'll just repeat that. What swashbuckling action movie was advertised when Tiago and Lewis went to visit Officer James Riley's Sonora Town honey, Sophia? Yes.
Bet you can't say that a third time fast.
No, I can't. That is one mouthful of a question, for sure. But please send in your answer to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. You can just put the episode number into the title and just provide the answer if you want to join us, or you can send them all into us in one go for our last podcast of the Penny Dreadful City of Angels run that we do. So keep your answers coming in, and you'll be in with a chance to win some goodies for sure.
Some dreadful
goodies. Yes.
Yeah.
That should be our episode 501. Should be our Penny Dreadful recap, so we can keep episode 500 separate from the individual show, so we can have 501. Will be just about Penny Dreadful and our wrap up on City of Angels.
Yes.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that, John. Do you want to give that question one more time, really, or do you not want to give it again?
Yes, I'll repeat that question one more time. What was the swashbuckling action movie that was advertised when Tiago and Lewis went to visit Officer James Riley's Sonora Town honey, Sophia?
Excellent. If you want to catch all the questions that we've given for the Penny Dreadful pub quiz so far, you can pop over to our website, tvpodcastindustries.com. There's a page up there that has all the questions detailed out there. So in case you happen to miss one in our coverage so far, you can check them there, or just listen back to all the podcast, and towards the end, we give out the questions.
Just do that. Do that. Give us the listen. Give us the download.
Absolutely.
You know you want.
Thanks so much once again for joining us. Thanks to everybody that's rated us over on iTunes. Thanks to everybody that's been sending their feedback, sending their thoughts, and supporting us over on Patreon. We'll be back next week with our discussion of Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, Episode 6, How It Is With Brothers.
Badly. I'm going.
Yeah.
It's bad.
I've got 4 brothers. I know how it goes with brothers. It's always fighting, always
nuggies,
punching.
Bad punching. It goes badly. Yes, thank you so much, dreadful listeners. And we will be back, as Derek says, very soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, fellow Dreadfuls. We'll be back with you very, very soon. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep praying.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.